basic principles.
Danny.
The first section is an outline of the Constitution. And the Constitution was written in 1787, but didn't take effect until 1789. It's slightly over 7,000 words and organized into an introduction called the Preamble and 7 numbered sections called Articles. And following the Articles are 27 amendments. So, the first 3 articles of the Constitution outline the organization and powers of each of the 3 branches of government, which are Congress, the President, and the court system. Article 4 outlines the place of the states in the Union and their relationships with the national government and the other states. Article 5 tells of the process of adding amendments to the Constitution. Article 6 declares the Constitution as supreme law of the nation, and Article 7 provided for the ratification of the Constitution.
The 6 basic principles. Popular sovereignty is one of them. In the U.S., the people are sovereign, meaning that all power rests with them. The Constitution's preamble declares sovereignty with the statement, "We the people of the United States do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America." And popular sovereignty. People are limited government.
But the meaning of popular sovereignty is that the national government receives its power through the Constitution, and all of the states do also through their constitutions, which keeps the government in check and under... Oh shoot, that was the wrong part. Never mind.
Well, but technically the states aren't considered sovereign because they have like a unitary form of government, technically. And like the federal government is considered sovereign. Just putting that.
Okay, but yeah, basically the Constitution keeps the people sovereign because it keeps the government like under the rule of the people. The second basic principle is limited government, and the Constitution says that no government is all-powerful. This connects to popular sovereignty because the sovereignty of the people limits the power of the federal government. And limited government means that the government may only do what is allowed by the people, and the government must be run according to the law of the Constitution, and no government officials are above the law. The government's power is limited through the Constitution as it is in the First Amendment, which declares that the government can't interfere with rights, such as like free speech.
Or like freedom of religion.
And constitutionalism is what says that the government officials aren't above the law, and that also goes with like the rule of law.
Did you say it goes with the rule of law?
Yeah, it's like kind of the same thing, like similes or something.
Like what the Constitution? Yeah.
The third principle is separation of powers. In British government, there was no separation between the legislative, executive, and judicial powers. Rather, they all belong to a single body. The presidential system we use in the United States. The powers are distributed evenly between the branches.
So like, oh, you done? Or sorry.
Go.
So like we use a presidential government, and Britain uses a parliamentary government. And in the parliamentary government, the president or like the executive branch is also a part of the legislative branch. If you guys remember from the other chapter. So like the executive branch is subject to direct control of the legislative branch, but at the same time they're still a part of it. And we don't have that. We have they're all separate and independent of one of each other, but at the same time they're co-equal.
Yeah. So basically, the reason that like our government is different than parliamentary government is because that in our government, the legislative power belongs to the Congress, the executive power belongs to the president, and the judicial power belongs to the courts. So they don't all belong to like one central body. And this is set out in the first, second, and third articles of the Constitution, which give the Congress power to make laws, allow the president to enforce, administer, and execute laws, and give the courts power to interpret and apply them.
Which number? Oh, so it's something. Oh, we checks and balances?
Reaching.
No, we're on.
No. Oh, sorry about that. James Madison defended separation of powers and claimed that at any time all three powers were, all the three powers were in the same hands. Tyranny, whatever, occurs.
Checks and balances. Ties the three branches together through a complex system that allows each branch to put restraints on the other branches. The president may veto any act of Congress, but Congress can override it with a 2/3 vote. Congress can refuse to provide funds requested by the president, and the Senate can refuse treaties or appointments made by the president. Each branch has to keep in mind the powers and goals of the other branches when making laws or appointing officials. An example is the impeaching of Andrew Johnson and later Bill Clinton by the Senate. Today, we have a split House with a Democratic president, Republican Senate, and Congress. And I know it's not in there, but something that's happening right now is Obama's he legalized 6 million people, but also I can't remember what state it was, but one of the state's courts.
No, it's a federal court.
It was a federal court.
It's the fifth district court.
Yeah, try to go against Obama's ruling, and then also it's the judicial branch and the legislative branch that are both against the executive branch right now. They're saying that Obama can't do that because it's not really in his executive power, but he's doing it.
Joey had a comment too. I think it's pretty insightful. He's going to say that this particular case came before this judge because of, was it 26 or 27 of the states that brought that?
I think it was 27.
27 of the states brought that before the federal district court because they were all worked up saying that this executive order would cost them, all sorts of money for what? What did they say? Was it whether they were concerned about the cost, Joey? Was it?
I didn't really
I don't know, something about education, law enforcement, and some welfare stuff. So anyway, that's how it came up. And the legislative branch is refusing to fund through the Department of Homeland Security, which is where Obama's executive order would happen. They do not want to give the money because they control the purse string. So they wouldn't give the money. So you have a full-blown separation of power war going on. The legislative against the executive, and possibly, we don't know yet, because the judicial just put an injunction stopping it until the case could proceed forward.
So do you guys think it's a good thing that because of our separation of power that each branch can do these checks and balances on each other? Is it a good thing that they are in conflict right now, in you guys' opinion?
I don't think conflict is ever good. I think this world should be more loud.
Does anyone else have any comments on that? What would happen if we didn't have these checks and balances? If Obama could just be okay, I'm just going to legalize all these people and no one can step in my way.
It would be like then you said, tyranny.
What did Daniel say?
Tyranny. Is it tyranny?
This is the example from the book of checks and balances, how they work between the president, the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch.
That's awesome. Judicial review. The power of courts to determine whether the government's actions are constitutional. The courts can declare an action unconstitutional and therefore null or and void. The case of Marbury versus Madison established the power of judicial review in 1803. And 150 cases have proved acts of Congress unconstitutional, and 1,100 laws have been void. I don't know. 1,100.
The last basic principle is federalism. The division of power between the central and regional governments came about as the framers tried to determine how to create a unified government that still consisted of separation between the states. And before this, the states were only tied through the Articles of Confederation. So that's how federalism came about, is because they didn't think that the Articles of Confederation was strong enough to like hold them together. And so all of the states were like too separated. But they didn't want them to be like too like molded together either. So and that's it for section 1.
Section 2.